Welcome to Bible Reader Companion. We are continuing our studies this week in 1 Timothy chapters 5 and 6. And today we're going to continue looking at some things in chapter 5. We're going to begin in verse 3, 1 Timothy chapter 5, beginning in verse 3. Honor widows who are really widows. But if any widow has children or grandchildren, let them first learn to show piety at home and to repay their parents, for this is good and acceptable before God. Now drop down with me to verse 16. If any believing man or woman has widows, let them relieve them, and do not let the church be burdened, that it may relieve those who are really widows. In the midst of this, Paul goes into some discussion of who are widows and who are worthy, and we're not going to take time, don't have time to look at all of that. There are a couple of lessons, I think, that we can learn from Paul's introduction and Paul's conclusion to this section. First, children have a responsibility to their parents and, Paul says, their grandparents. You know, Jesus addressed this as well when he talked to the Pharisees and said they had tried to shove off their responsibility. And he talked about the idea of respecting mother and father, and implied in that and stated that that involves more than just saying, hey, I love you, or hey, I respect you. It involves caring for and providing for them. And so as children and grandchildren, we have this responsibility. This is not unique to being a Christian. It's unique to being children and grandchildren. But as Christians, we should respect that we have that responsibility. And we should desire to take on that responsibility. We need to be careful that we don't reach a mentality that says, hey, I'm at a stage of my life, mom and dad have grown old, and I'll find somebody else to take care of them so I don't have to deal with it, so that I don't have to be burdened with it. There are times, everybody understands, that it is beyond the ability of a child or a grandchild to provide the type of medical, emotional support that a parent or grandparent needs when they reach a certain stage of life. And we're not talking about that. We're talking about the mentality that says, I simply want to push that burden off to somebody else. So number one, children and grandchildren, understand and recognize the responsibility that you have to your parents and your grandparents. Prepare for that, plan for that, expect that, and live for that. But the second thing that he noted in the second part of this, or at the end of this, is that do not let the church be burdened. I feel sometimes that we treat the church, and many people treat the church, as a way for me to avoid my individual responsibilities or pass off my individual responsibilities. And it doesn't just have to do with caring for the widows and the grandmothers and the mothers. I think it applies in a lot of ways. But I think if we'll study the scripture, what we'll understand is the church was not created to relieve the individual of responsibility. Church was created that we might encourage one another to fulfill our individual responsibilities, to lift one another up, to encourage one another, to strengthen one another, to do what we ought to do, not provide a way for us to get out of our individual responsibility. Let us look for the opportunities to respect, care for, and provide for our parents and our grandparents. Thank you, and hope you'll join us again tomorrow.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook for more content like this.